Today's episode is brought to you by Proud Wolves. It is Proud Wolves' mission to make sure children all over the world have free access to cultural activities and sport. Proud Wolves helps organizations to change their income models and stops them relying on membership fees for children. Find Proud Wolves on Facebook for more information. Now, get ready for your All-NBA Team of the Week.
Goeiedag, enchantée, and welcome to this week's episode of A24 Presents All-NBA Team of the Week. The trade deadline has passed and there are only about 20 games left to play in the regular season. It is time for our teams to prepare for the final stretch to the end of the season and finally show the world what they are aiming for: a high lottery pick, the playing game, or home court advantage in the playoffs. Over the next 3 weeks, we discuss our 5 favorites in contention for any of these goals. And we start from the bottom. This week, we discuss 5 of the teams that are currently chasing the number 1 lottery pick in this year's draft. Our picks might not necessarily be the teams the lowest in the standings, because not everybody's tanking on purpose, and I do predict that we'll see some changes in the bottom of the standings over the coming weeks. Get ready for your All-NBA Team of the Week. Pick 1! Our first pick of the week are the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now that the trade deadline has passed, they've put all their cards on the table and plan to tank hard. Star player Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been sidelined with a foot injury, and the only experienced player on the roster, Al Horford, has been told that he's not playing any more games this season. OKC has won 20 games and sit in third from the bottom in the West, but if they'd be playing in the Eastern Conference, they'd be in contention for a spot in the playing game. In simple terms, this means that overall, there are at least 7 other teams with higher odds to secure the first pick in this year's draft. OKC needs to start losing, and quickly. OKC could have 3 first-round picks in this year's draft. They have their own, which ideally needs to fall within the top 5 to secure one of the best prospects in this year's draft. They'll receive the best pick from either Miami or Houston, whichever one is higher. It'll most likely be the one from Houston, but it is top 4 protected, so if Houston ends up with a top 4 pick, OKC will receive Miami's pick, which will likely be outside of the top 20. If Houston's pick end up outside of the top 4, OKC will likely have 2 picks in the top 10. The third pick could come from the Golden State, but is top 20 protected, and following today's standings, the Warriors will hold on to this one. Even if the Thunder miss out on good picks in this year's draft, they don't have to worry. In total, OKC has 34 picks over the next 7 years. Not only that, with SGA and Luguentz Dort, they already have 2 fantastic prospects on their team that they can build around. Their rookies, Maledon and Pokusevski, have proven to be pretty solid as well. Their fan base will not have to worry. This team will end up back in the playoffs soon, probably as soon as next season, making this one of the quickest rebuilds in NBA history. GM Sam Presti is one of the best GMs in the game, and he won't stop until he finally achieves an NBA title with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Pick 2! Second pick of the week are the Orlando Magic. Their front office has blown up the team at the trade deadline, moving all-star Nikola Vucevic and his wingmen Aaron Gordon and Evan Fournier. Vucevic was traded to Chicago, Gordon ended up in Denver, and Fournier was shipped off to Boston. In return, they received some young talented players like Wendell Carter Jr. and RJ Hampton, and some older, not by much, and experienced players like Otto Porter Jr. and Gary Harris. Plenty of draft picks for the next 4 years. The Magic scraped into the playoffs the last 2 seasons, only to bow out in the first round without making a splash. The organization never really completed a successful rebuild since they traded away Dwight Howard in 2012. Incidentally, that was the trade that included Vucevic, and never successfully put the right players around him. With the talent lining up in this year's draft, the Orlando Magic GM John Hammond decided that it is time to start fresh. Alongside the new acquisitions, they already have talented youngsters like Markelle Fultz and Anthony Cole and Mo Bamba on their roster. After this season, they hope to add another talent to it and try to build towards another team worthy of the NBA Finals, like the team that lost in 5 games against the Lakers back in 2009. Right now, the Magic are the second worst team in the Eastern Conference, sharing the spot with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavaliers are not really trying to lose on purpose, so it's likely that they'll end up lower than them. But the team might cause a few upsets on the way. Since the trade deadline, they barely lost the game against the Lakers. They've beaten the Clippers and the Pelicans, were blown away by the Jazz, and held on until the final quarter against the Nuggets. It is one of the better runs the Magic have had so far this season.
Before we move on, I'd like to talk to you about A24. A24 was created by Proud Wolves with the intention to provide children with an opportunity to learn and play basketball at their own pace and completely free. A24 created different courses to improve your basketball skills that are available on the website, but our real mission is to help disadvantaged children by building and upgrading basketball courts around the world, and to give them basketball gear to play with. Come and find our website, and please buy a t-shirt to support our cause. Now back to All-NBA Team of the Week. Pick 3!
Our third pick of the week are the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Wolves are the biggest disappointment of the season. Granted, they have some excuses because of injuries and COVID protocol, but they were supposed to be fighting for a spot in the playoffs with stars like Karl Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, and Rookie of the Year contender Anthony Edwards. Instead, they are the worst team in the league. The upside for the Wolves is obvious. They need to end up with a top 3 pick in this year's draft because otherwise they lose their pick to Golden State. When they traded Bradley Wiggins for D'Angelo last season, they included their first round pick for this draft with a top 3 protection. It was never the plan for the Wolves to try and save their pick. Like I said, they started the season with the aim to finish in a playoff spot. They brought in Ricky Rubio as an experienced veteran and signed Malik Beasley to a bigger contract, hoping that he would bring his scoring talent into this season as well. Unfortunately, it didn't work out this way. Beasley ended up in jail for a short while and was suspended for 12 games after threatening his family with a rifle. D'Angelo and Cat have only played in about half of the Wolves' games, and Rubio is playing far beneath his capabilities. The only bright spot in their season so far is rookie Anthony Edwards. The number 1 draft pick is the best rookie in the league right now after LaMelo Ball's injury. He's filling up the highlight reel with his impressive dunks. If the Wolves can secure a top 3 pick this season, they have another chance to add another piece to their puzzle. With another top prospect, they should be able to contend for a playoff spot in the Western Conference. Cat is one of the best offensive players in the league and doesn't deserve to lose almost every night. If the Wolves are not competitive next season, he might try to force his way out of Minnesota. And right now, his trade value is not very high, so it's in everyone's best interest that the team starts to perform.
Pick 4!
Fourth pick of the week are the Houston Rockets. For me personally, it is a big surprise that they are in the situation they are in. Yes, it was fairly obvious at the start of the season that they were not going to hold on to James Harden. I wasn't a big fan of the trade, especially the return that Houston got for the trade, but Victor Oladipo was a piece that could hold some trade value in the future. That's how I saw it back in January in the previous episode anyway. When the time came, at the trade deadline, to finally flip Oladipo, the Houston front office failed to find a good trade and let him go for basically nothing, with all due respect to Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley. They started the season with an absolute superstar. 4 months later, they have nothing to show for it. They weren't able to hold on to any of the decent players involved in the ripple effect of the Harden trade and only have some half-decent draft picks. For Houston Rockets GM, Rafael Stone, it is his first time as a general manager for an NBA team, and he only started this season after Daryl Morey left the job to go to Philadelphia. It was clear that he would have to lead the Rockets into a rebuild once Westbrook and Harden had expressed that they wanted to leave. He started pretty well by trading Westbrook to Washington for Wall and a draft pick, but what happened after that was a bit more difficult to understand. It seems like he purposely traded away all the decent players in the trade and only held on to the draft picks so he can keep his job for longer. This way, the measurable result for Houston after the trades are long-term. He even said it himself not to judge his moves until 2030. Usually I'm not a big fan of the media and fan bases judging a front office within weeks of a decision, but this one's too far the other way. Even though I don't agree with his timeline, I do agree with Stone to give him at least some time to see how his moves pan out. For example, the last time a franchise traded away their best players for a bunch of draft picks, those draft picks turned into Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. In 2013, the Brooklyn Nets traded their draft picks to Boston for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, and the Celtics turned them into some solid players. The Nets ended up with pretty much nothing, and Boston was able to rebuild a great young core after winning a championship with those guys. We're almost 10 years removed from that trade, so Rafael Stone could have a point to give him a decade to work out his moves. In the meantime, let's all enjoy the fact that it is again the Nets that have traded away their future for 3 superstars.
Pick 5!
Our fifth and final pick of the week are the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are a strange team. 50 games into the season, it's still not clear to me if they're trying to make it to the playing game or if they're trying to be bad on purpose. They're the worst team in the Eastern Conference, by far, and yet they have made some moves at the start of the season that looked pretty smart at the time. They drafted well, choosing Killian Hayes and Sadiq Bey, and signed Jeremy Grant to be their franchise cornerstone. Other than that, they added a bunch of experienced players like Mason Plumlee and Wayne Ellington, and then it all just fell apart. Moving towards the trade deadline, it did become clear that they are not trying to get a high lottery pick in the draft and will continue to build on their team. They bought out Blake Griffin, who ended up signing with the Brooklyn Nets, and traded away Delon Wright for some draft picks. They were two of the three best performing players. Since then, Grant has been playing less minutes than usual. The youngsters are getting more time on the court. Killian Hayes finally returned from injury this week, and he played 20 minutes against the Knicks. The Pistons are currently the third worst team in the league, trailing the Wolves and the Rockets, and have a good chance of ending up with a pick in the top 5. This will give them another opportunity to draft a quality prospect to add to their roster. This might not have been the way they originally planned it, but the Pistons are looking at a bright future if their front office keeps drafting well and makes some smart moves during the off-season.
This is our All-NBA Team of the Week. Please share our podcast and give us 5 stars. If you have any questions, you can contact the show on 824office@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Ballers out.